No, so the process is that the administrators first and foremost want to sort of weed out any tire kickers and time wasters. That's the phrase. Isn't it? Tire kickers is the phrase.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of All Wednesday. We're back with Alex Miller because he is on top of everything that's happening at Sheffield Wednesday at the moment. It's been a mad couple of weeks, hasn't it, Miller? You been a bit busy.
Yeah, I'm not sure about being on top of everything for a start. That's the most generous thing. I don't feel like it, but yeah, it is a busy time. I was speaking to someone at the ground um, last night at the Norwich game, and sort of this thing. Oh, you can just write about football now, can't you? But it's we're not quite out of the woods yet, are we? It's
Yeah, a little
still
way to go before that happens.
yeah, still a few weeks of who knows what, and then hopefully down the line, um, the first proper step into a bold new era. But the vibes are good at Hillsborough at the minute.
Yeah, it's actually been a while since we've had you on the show. A fair bit's happened since then. um, where are we at the moment? Obviously, we know that there's X amount of days that have got past. I think it's 28 days you've written that has to go by before anything can really get moving in terms of the wheels in motion. But where are we at with Sheffield Wednesday and the sale and the future at this point in time?
Lots and lots of interested parties, dozens of interested parties. Lots of those parties have returned NDAs for a look at a first data room, and at least seven, as of last update, seven of those parties have shown proof of funds of £50 million, which gives us access to a second data room. And there are no bids in yet. Obviously, with this 28-day marketing period, um, whether or not you'd expect bids, at this stage, I'm not too sure. Um, but the administrators are expecting bids in sort of the next week or two. Um, so yeah, I think things are moving on quite nicely. Um, Speaking to the administrators, they have been um, pleasantly surprised, is I think the phrase that they use, in terms of the quality and profile of some of the people that are involved. Many of whom remain a mystery, which, as a nosy journalist, is a little bit frustrating. But at the same time, as someone that wants to see the best for the club and see a proper process in place, and ultimately the club moved on to a better health, I think it's encouraging that um, nosy gets like they and me, don't know the identity of a lot of these. So yeah, it's still an uncertain time. We don't know who's going to end up with the football club. But as I say, the noise is coming from the people that do know, or do know that the people that have gone a long way into the process. They seem quite encouraged by it all.
Yeah, you make it sound like Crystal Maze, data room one and data room two. Like, wonder what's in data room three and what you have to do to get there.
Your
But no,
agent is there.
but it is. I think, like you say, it is encouraging. And I think it sort of puts to bed this idea that it was almost like with Chansiri, he was trying to put it into people's heads that nobody wanted this football club. When it wasn't that nobody wanted it, it was just nobody wanted it at his price. And that's obviously that's been all thrown out the window now. Just want to clarify. You say the 50 million proof of funds. That's not 50 million for the club, is it? That's not as That's nothing to do with the actual value of the club and what people will be paying for it.
No, so the process is that the administrators first and foremost want to sort of weed out any tire kickers and time wasters.
We've
That's
seen a
the
few of
phrase.
them.
Tire kickers is the phrase. Um, and ultimately, whoever comes in is going to have to prove to the EFL that they're able to manage the club for a minimum of 2 years. So £50 million in liquid assets. This isn't um, some lord that's got a £50 million gaff somewhere in the Cotswolds or anything like that. These have to be liquid assets, and you have to be able to prove that you have the means to run Sheffield Wednesday for the sort of medium term future. So yeah, that's where that £50 million from. In terms of how much you'll actually, it'll take to part with the club. Sorry, to take on the club. No one knows yet. It'll be determined by the market. There was a statement put out by the club to that effect a couple of days ago, wasn't there? So yeah, obviously there are creditors that need to be satisfied. I think it should be stressed once again that as administrators they are duty bound by insolvency law to ultimately accept the best deal that um, will for creditors, so the best realization for creditors. So you're talking pence on the pound for a lot of those creditors. The football creditors, there is an EFL rule of 25p in the pound on that. Um, so look, there's a whole lot. Every time I say something, there's something else jumps into my mind about what's relevant with this stuff, and we are sort of swimming in regulations and that sort of thing. But as I say, it's worth pointing out that Chris, Julian, and Paul aren't sat in a room, picking, who's got the best plan for Sheffield Wednesday. All that stuff
Yeah.
comes into it because the EFL are involved. If you're not going to pass the fit and proper test or owners and directors, all that sort of stuff, you're not going to be accepted to the table. So yeah, few weeks of guess who still to run.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna mention that, this idea, because I think there are some people sort of, amongst the fan base, obviously wondering about the well-being of the club for obvious reasons, and I think it was probably is important to point out that there's no preference here, is there? There's no like, "Oh, well, we like what this person offers or what this person offers." Aside from anything but the money, the actual, physical offer. And that's ultimately what it's going to come down to, isn't it? With Wednesday, it's like you say, it's going to be about who puts the best bid on the table and what is best for everybody that's been owed money over this, increasingly long period of time.
Yeah, and there is something else at play in terms of the EFL. Everyone knows that Wednesday's become something of a headline. So between the EFL and the IFR, there will be a lot of eyes on who takes over at Sheffield Wednesday. There was a situation at Wigan Athletic a couple of years ago where club went into administration, was picked up. They ended up in administration, within 18 months, and it was all a bit of a mess. So
But that can't happen again, can it?
exactly. So I think every possible measure will be taken against that. But yeah, as you say, the point's worth making that the administrators aren't sat there choosing who's got the best plan for the training ground or this sort of
Mm,
thing. That they have a job to do. They are legally obliged to do it in a certain way. Um, but there is a bit of a marketing schmooze, to get
of
the
course,
best
yeah.
possible people to the table, and obviously the blue and white night was a part of that. So yeah, let's see what happens. The sort of the conversations about I'd prefer this profile, I prefer that profile it's not really up to us. It's not up to
Mm,
anyone. It'll
yeah.
come to what it comes down to. So, yeah, potentially exciting times. And you would hope that the safeguarding that is in place, especially around this one, especially what's happened over the last sort of 5 or 6 years at Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
You'd hope that it would be the most safeguarded of safeguarded clubs, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. You mentioned that their blue and white night. How nice was it to see Hillsborough looking like that again? Even like, you look at picture of the game. Steve Ellis, our photographer, sent some brilliant photos where he went up into the stands a little bit and got like a big view of everybody. And seeing Barry Bannon walking out at Hillsborough again with that kind of crowd, seeing the cop, chock a block is it's just so nice to see. And I think it's not like we've not seen it before, but after what we've been through and what's happened over the last few months, it's genuinely like really heartwarming to seeing it.
Yeah, yeah. There's been a few times, isn't there, where I've sort of texted you and sort of said, "Oh, I'm gutted you're not here," 'cause that last night would have been another one that, um, you'd have you'd have absolutely loved, and having experienced, having obviously been to all the games where it has been boycotted.
Mm,
There was the super boycott against Borough, um, and yeah, it's just the feeling of the place, and walking to the ground and seeing all those things that you're so used to seeing. Kids walking around in the tops, and just the weight of people and a sort of hubbub that comes
even
with
even
it.
even the colours being back, right? Like, even just seeing
One
blue and white about the place again.
100%. It's exactly what I was going to say. It feels like the club's back.
Mm,
The speaking to
we're
people
so back.
during the boycott period, um, it felt that there was a mood of people going there through duty or habit, or
Mm,
whereas people certainly in the last couple of games have gone there because it's a football club that they love. That it's a they can go there without any sense of guilt, if that's the right word. They can go there with everyone's got a big friendship group attached to a football club often, right?
yeah,
If there's three or four in that friendship group, they're going, right, well, I'm not stepping foot into the that affects it. And maybe it's the same with groups of family that go, all this sort of stuff, impeccable vibes. And yeah, a lot of fun last night. And look, the football's one thing. Thought they were good last night. They were probably worthy the win. Um, but ultimately, all those problems that we've spoken about, and that Chancery's left the football side in terms of lack of depth and lack of quality. Frankly, no slight on the lads that are out there putting it in. Um, but it's so secondary, the football. It genuinely felt like this institution was being attacked,
yeah.
and they've got it back, and that's a very lovely thing.
Yeah, it's almost like just give us -30 and be done with it, and just, what comes will come. I mean, you mentioned there about groups of friends. There was a very specific group of friends there last night. A few lads who've known each other over the years: Chris Waddle, David Hurst, Terry Curran, Imre Varade. Um, Zico was there. It's a little thing, right? But given the backstory there, and how a couple of those were effectively ostracized from the club while Chansiri was in charge. It's a big moment, isn't it, to have David Hurst and Chris Waddle, especially because those two have been sort of pretty outspoken about it in particular. To see them out on that turf again, addressing that crowd, it must have felt pretty special. That
Yeah, yeah, and it did. And I think, like you say, the backstory of Chris and Hursty in particular. Neither were banned. Hursty was there for the 5,000th game celebrations, and Chris is knocked about for punditry and that sort of thing. But you sort of got the feeling, certainly from the chairman's point of view, they weren't particularly welcome. And
yeah,
you put it to the backdrop of the war of words he had with Carlton Palmer, who would have been there last night but was away on holiday, um, and all this sort of stuff. It felt like that period of Sheffield Wednesday history, which people laud, and rightly so, and it's very much the reason Wednesday is the club that it is today. To the stuff that they did building on what came before. It felt like that period of history was attacked.
yeah,
Certainly, when I was writing the book about the 91 season, speaking to people who weren't didn't get involved with Chancery, that had moved away, that a lot of them spoke about the way that their teammates had been treated, and that they weren't
yeah,
feel necessarily welcome in the ground and this sort of thing. And that was all down to one man. And yeah, to see them celebrated in that way was great. Um, and it just added to what was a pretty special evening.
yeah. We'll talk about the football a little bit. Like you say, you touched on it before. Pretty good response from Wednesday in terms of Henrik Pedersen's demand for better first halves. 4 minutes in, Barry Bannon does that. We've seen him do it so many times now it's all a bit silly, isn't it? Really, but all these times, and I'm not going to make this a Barry Bannon podcast because we've done that 100 times as well. Um, but he's a special footballer, isn't he? And when it always feels like him, a moment like that, right in front of the cop, like it's exactly what that game needed and that night needed.
Yeah, it was, and you know where we sit, Joe, sort of in the middle of the grandstand. As soon as it came off his boot, it was in. It was one of those that just looks like,
He didn't
well,
even
the
hit it
kid.
that hard, did he?
No, but I don't know. It was just something in the angles.
Mm,
Maybe the sense of occasion was sort of clouding it. But yeah, it was always in. And in terms of how football games go and the fine margins, the chance that Sargent had at the other end early on,
yeah,
really good chance. If that goes in, the whole evening's different. I've
yeah,
no doubt whatsoever that the fans would have still made noise and all the rest of it. Um, but there's no doubt it does alter things.
yeah.
Um,
And there was the flip of it as well, wasn't there? When they scored, Jamal Lowe misses that chance, and then they go right down the other end and score, and it was almost like a carbon copy flip for the 2 goals.
yeah, but in terms of the game itself, it was Wednesday's best attacking performance certainly of the season. You can look back at maybe the second half at Wrexham or um, the Portsmouth win was quite functional, I'd say. In terms of hitting the channels and beating them at their own game, but um, yeah, it was there was some really lovely free flowing stuff, and they played with a confidence, sort of with and without the ball. Henrik spoke afterwards about the courage to. He's spoken all season about the need for more courage in the pressing. When
Mm,
someone goes, you all go, and you have confidence in each other and what you're going to do. Um, and you could see that they really stopped Norwich playing. I'd look at the stats last night, and it's the most long balls attempted that Norwich have played all year, and that
yeah,
was
they
down
really
to
forced them into a lot of mistakes, didn't they?
big time, and particularly in the first half. And obviously, the frustration will come in the lack of taking chances because there were some big chances there, really big chances
Yeah,
that
very
were
much so.
missed, and ultimately the goal that they've scored is a worldie,
It's not
which is
really a
great.
chance, is it?
There you go, um, and they were open at the back. Norwich. I, we spoke briefly last night, didn't we? That game could have been 3-3 or 4-0 either way. It
Yeah,
was really
yeah,
open. It was entertaining. It was great. But again, as a football writer, you probably shouldn't lean into this too hard. But the football just seems so irrelevant. Everything's a little bit of a foregone conclusion, and the fact that
yeah.
Wednesday put back to back performances in is really important. Particularly one at home. Um, but them had they won last night, you're still looking at a gap that
Still in the minuses.
just with the likelihood of another points deduction at least. Um, the squad size, the this, that, and the other. So um, yeah, all good fun, and it's just really good to see them. The difficulty is, of course, they've got a very quick turnaround now to Southampton, long
They're
trip
not putting
south.
in place to do it.
Um, I asked Henrik last night. There were some tired bodies out there uh, after the Norwich game. Do you think there'll be any changes? And how he is, just so sort of laid back and relaxed. He just had this biggest smile, as if to say, "What do you think?"
Yeah. What changes? What changes?
Yeah.
Because the alternative is that the changes are throw the children out. That's effectively
Well,
the changes.
yeah. And look, there's a conversation around Bailey Kadamata, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah.
The fan base frustration with Ike Ogbo is clearly there, and it's obvious why. I thought Ike was good last night. Um, not not in terms of going forward, and that thing of he's a striker, he needs to create chances or score goals would be nice, I guess. Um, but ultimately, I thought he was excellent defensively, and that stopping Norwich play particularly in the first half. I think he tied as things went on, but certainly in the first half, I thought Ugbo was outstanding in that side of the game.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's not ideal that Bailey has to be the one to miss out. But we'll have a piece running the next couple of days with Henrik speaking about um, Bailey having to add to his defensive side of the game, and the bottom line is you're in this difficult position where Wednesday aren't going to have a lot of the ball a lot of the time,
And
so
they are gonna be defending quite a lot.
you need to be really really good at that.
Yeah,
And you of course you want your young, homegrown, incredibly talented, will no doubt play an awful. It will probably be the main man for Wednesday next year. You want him playing as much as possible. I just
yeah,
think in this little period we're not perhaps going to see a great deal of that. He may well play on Saturday, given the tiredness and all the rest of it. Um, it's certainly not a popular selection, I'd say.
yeah. No, I think, Bailey, he made a case for himself again when he came on. He's a
Yeah.
bulldog, and, he puts himself about and all that kind of stuff, and I think you just his work is a bit more obvious, is probably
Mm.
the best way to put it. Like, you can see what he's doing, whereas I think some of the good work that EK does is a little bit more, understated, shall we say.
In terms of the setup, I think it's worth. Last year, there was always this thing about Smudge and the number of goals that he'd scored, and that conversation around. Well, actually, he's really effective coming on late because Wednesday stay in the game, and
Mm,
then when things get a little bit more stretched, maybe the opposition team are more liable to sort of be bullied around, and that's when you can give him one chance and he scores one goal. And like you say, Bailey was great last night. Came on, made a chance for himself more or less.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, it might well be a conversation for the next few weeks. That.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we wrap up, you speaking there about the size of the squad. Did a story not long back saying that Wednesday were in talks with the EFL about potentially getting a little bit of help. You got a bit more information on that. Where are things at on that front in terms of Wednesday possibly getting a green light to get a free agent or two in through the door?
Yeah, they're still very hopeful. Those conversations are taking place, and the club are hoping to have a firm update by the end of the week. So, what today's Thursday? Heading into tomorrow. Um, Liam Cooper has remained a primary target, and we gather is sort of one that could get done quite quickly if they do get that green light. Um, and a central midfielder is very much the priority, I think, as well. For a number of reasons. There's some tired bodies in there, and looking ahead to January, hopefully new owners are in and they can do a bit of wheeling and dealing. But you've got Jan Valery that's heading off as well. So
Yeah, it's gonna be a big
yeah,
miss, that one.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, those are the priorities. Nathaniel Chalabar is going to be out for a few weeks more. Anyone sort of pinning their hopes on his return, a little bit disappointing there. So yeah, hopefully they do get the firm green light and there's some stuff good to go.
Fingers crossed, because it would certainly be a help. They need all the help they can get at the moment. But yeah, Alex, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure as usual, and we'll see you very soon.